You've carried it long enough. The ache behind your chest, the quiet hum of something unfinished, the weight in your breath each morning, it's not time that failed to heal you. It's your refusal to let go of what no longer belongs in your soul. You tell yourself you've moved on, but the truth lives deeper than words. It's in the way your body tenses when a certain memory returns uninvited. It's in the way you scan every room for someone who once looked at you like you were everything, someone who became a ghost but never left your nervous system. You are haunted not by their absence but by your attachment to who you were when you were with them. Letting go is not forgetting. It's not deleting history. It's not denying what was real. It is the sacred act of dying, consciously releasing a version of yourself that can no longer survive in the world you now inhabit. And this is where most people run, because dying even symbolically terrifies the ego. But your soul craves it, because something deeper in you knows, until you let go, you cannot become who you were meant to be. Carl Jung once said, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." But acceptance is not a passive act, it is the fiercest kind of surrender. It's what happens when you finally stop resisting the truth of your experience and allow reality to break you open. This is not weakness. This is the initiation into psychological freedom. You've tried to heal by waiting, by numbing, by distracting yourself with noise accomplishments, even spiritual bypassing dressed as progress. But the truth is, you cannot outgrow a wound you still worship. You cannot evolve while secretly clinging to the fantasy that the past should have happened differently. You are still negotiating with a version of reality that no longer exists. The pain you carry is not just emotional, it is archetypal. It belongs to a deeper pattern inside the psyche. The more you resist the necessity of release, the more you remain trapped in the persona, the mask you wear to convince others that you're fine. But beneath the mask, the shadow festers. The rejected parts of your grief, your anger, your powerlessness, they do not disappear. They wait, and they grow stronger the more you pretend they aren't there. Letting go requires that you make contact with the shadow, that you look into the face of what you've denied, suppressed, or projected onto others. It requires that you reclaim the parts of you you've tried to abandon, especially the ones that still ache for love, for justice, for meaning. This is not comfortable work. It is not glamorous. It is holy. You don't let go by force. You let go by understanding, by seeing clearly the cost of your clinging, by realizing that the rope you hold on to is the very thing choking your soul. And in that moment when you finally open your hand and loosen your grip, you do not lose something. You regain yourself. But here is the paradox. The very thing you're trying to let go of was once what gave your life purpose. That person, that dream, that identity, it mattered. It defined you, and now in its absence you feel hollow, directionless. This is where the deeper journey begins. Because who are you without your pain? Who are you when you are not performing the role you've rehearsed for years? The good one, the strong one, the broken one, the fighter. Who are you when there's nothing left to prove? No one left to chase and nowhere left to run. You are not the story you keep retelling. You are not the wound you protect. You are the awareness that watches it all unfold. The silent witness behind every heartbreak, every illusion, every rebirth. But to touch that awareness, you must walk through the fire of unknowing. You must stand naked before the ruins of what you thought life was supposed to be. You must allow the pain to speak not from a place of victimhood, but from the place where truth breaks through delusion. And when it speaks, it will not sound like bitterness. It will not accuse or demand. It will whisper, "It's time. It's time to stop bleeding for people who cannot meet you. It's time to stop bargaining with fate. It's time to stop blaming yourself for things your soul had to experience in order to awaken. You are not broken. You are full of unprocessed wisdom. And letting go is how you make space for that wisdom to rise. The unconscious clings. The self releases. The unconscious fights to maintain control, looping in patterns, fixated on closure, addicted to old pain, because at least it's familiar. But the self, your true essence, is not interested in familiar. It seeks wholeness. It whispers beneath the noise, let it fall away. What's meant to stay will stay. What must end must die. And from that death, something sacred will emerge, Jung said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Letting go is how you make it conscious. It is how you stop being a character in a story written by your past and start becoming the author of a deeper destiny. But the first sentence begins here, with grief, with honesty, with your trembling hand finally releasing the thread of a life that no longer sustains your soul. There's a silence that comes after surrender. A silence so vast it almost feels like death. Not the kind that ends life, but the kind that ends illusions. You sit in it, unsure of what you've done. You wonder if you've let go too soon, if maybe you were wrong, if maybe holding on just a little longer would have brought the miracle you prayed for, but deep down you already know the truth. The miracle was never going to be found in the past. It was always waiting in the release. In that quiet, you begin to feel things again. Subtle things, the sound of your breath, the sensation of gravity in your chest, the unspoken ache that always lived just beneath your smile. You didn't notice it before because the noise of attachment was too loud. But now in this raw and quiet place you begin to touch the real wound. Letting go is not an act of cutting away. It's an act of returning. Returning to the center of your being where all the pieces you gave away still wait. The love you gave to the wrong person, the dignity you traded for approval, the self-respect you buried beneath longing. They are not lost, they were only hidden. And now you come home. But this homecoming is not gentle. It asks you to see the part of you that allowed the wound to form in the first place. It asks you to admit how you abandoned yourself in the name of connection. It asks you to see how you mistook survival for love. And that's the pain no one wants to face. Not the pain of what they did to you, but the pain of what you did to yourself while chasing them. This is where the deeper shadow work begins. Because the shadow isn't just your rage and grief. It's also your guilt, your complicity, your hunger to be chosen at any cost. It's the secret you hide from even yourself, the part that fears you may have been the architect of your own heartbreak. And in many ways you were, but not because you were weak, because you were unconscious, because you were surviving, because you were human. Carl Jung wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And here in the ruins of your identity, you begin to see what you've never dared to look at. Not to judge it, but to witness it. Not to shame it, but to understand it. And this understanding is the beginning of transformation. You start to see how your clinging was not love. It was fear disguised as devotion. You start to see how your fantasies were not hope. They were stories you told yourself to avoid the pain of abandonment. You start to see how your suffering wasn't just inflicted, it was sustained by your own refusal to accept what was always there. They were never going to be what you needed. And here's the hardest part. You begin to forgive them. Not because they asked for it, not because they deserve it, but because you're tired of bleeding every time their name crosses your mind. Forgiveness is not permission. It is liberation. It is the severing of the psychic tie that keeps you bound to their shadow. It is the moment you say, "I choose peace over proof. I choose healing over history." But even more than that, you begin to forgive yourself. You stop demanding that your younger self should have known better. You stop punishing yourself for what you didn't see. You stop crucifying your heart for being open, for being real, for loving fully. Because to love, even when it ends in pain, is not a mistake. It is a form of courage. Letting go is not just about releasing them. It's about releasing the version of you that only knew how to survive through attachment. It's about stepping out of the trauma loop and into a new archetype, the one who no longer begs to be loved, but who becomes love itself. The old you needed someone to stay so you could feel safe. The new you knows that safety isn't found in another's arms, it's found in your own presence. The old you feared being alone. The new you sees solitude as sacred space where the self begins to speak. And what it says is quiet, but life-changing. It says, you are not your abandonment. It says you are not the relationship that ended. It says you are not the mistake or the misstep or the missed opportunity. You are the awareness that holds it all. You are the witness of your becoming. You are the one who survived the unraveling, and who now, with trembling hands, begins to reweave a self rooted not in fear, but in truth. The more you let go, the more space you create for something new to enter. Not a person, not a distraction, but a deeper encounter with your own essence. And in that space, something ancient stirs. A knowing, a remembrance, a glimpse of the self that was never broken, never lost, never unloved. This is not healing by time. This is healing by truth. And the truth is, you were always worthy of peace. You just thought you had to earn it through pain. You don't. You only have to stop clinging to what no longer feeds your soul. And that is the paradox of letting go. It feels like death, but it brings life. But now you stand in the aftermath. The storm has passed, and what remains is not the silence of emptiness, it is the silence of space. Pure, unclaimed, uncarved space. And in this space you no longer chase or plead or pretend. You listen. And what you hear is not the voice of the world, nor the echo of the past. It is your own soul beginning to speak again, unfiltered by need, uncorrupted by fear. You feel the grief rising, but this time it doesn't drown you. You let it move through you like rain over scorched earth. And with every tear, with every breathless ache, something within you begins to soften, not collapse, soften. Because this is what healing feels like, not the absence of pain, but the return of wholeness. The moment you stop splitting yourself into what was and what should have been, and you simply allow what is. It doesn't mean you won't miss them. It doesn't mean you won't long for what could have been, but longing is not suffering. Clinging is. Longing is part of the human condition. It reminds you of your capacity to feel, to hope, to love. It reminds you that your heart was open enough to be broken and strong enough to open again. But now, something else begins to rise beneath the grief. Not happiness, not yet. Something quieter, stronger. The first sparks of dignity, the kind that comes not from pride but from deep inner knowing. The dignity of someone who has walked through fire, laid their illusions on the altar, and emerged holding only the truth. You realize now that you don't need closure from them. You don't need answers. You don't need an apology. What you needed was this: to look within and see yourself clearly past the shame, past the narrative, past the mask. And when you do, you don't find a victim. You don't find a failure. You find a soul still burning, still luminous, still whole. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And becoming who you truly are requires this descent, this unraveling, this letting go of every identity, every attachment, every belief that tethered you to an old reality. You must fall not into despair, but into truth. You must lose not your worth, but your illusions. You must break not to be destroyed, but to be revealed. And what is revealed is this: beneath every layer of pain, there is a self untouched. A self that has watched it all. Your betrayals, your heartbreaks, your self-abandonment, and has waited patiently for your return. This is the part of you that has no agenda, no fear, no need to control. This is the part of you that knows how to let go, not because it doesn't care, but because it understands. It understands that everything which falls away was never meant to stay. It understands that real love does not demand your silence, your shrinking, your suffering. It understands that letting go is not the end of connection, it is the beginning of communion with your truest nature. And once you've touched that center, once you've breathed from that place, your entire reality begins to shift. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You are no longer at war with what is. You are no longer negotiating with ghosts. You are no longer trying to rewrite the past. You are present. And in presence there is peace. Not the peace of numbness, not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of alignment. The peace that comes when your soul and your actions, your truth and your choices, your inner voice and your outer life all begin to harmonize. You don't have to chase anymore. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to hold your breath waiting to be chosen, because you've already chosen yourself. And that choice, that sacred inner commitment, is the gateway to your individuation. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of becoming whole. Not perfect, whole. Not free from pain, but free from self-deception. Not detached from life, but immersed in it without being consumed. You will still love. You will still grieve, but you will no longer collapse under the weight of either. Because now there is a center within you that does not move. Now you are no longer the wound, you are the witness. No longer the storm, you are the sky it moves through. And every time the past tries to pull you back, every time the old craving stirs you, return to this knowing letting go is not abandonment. It is alignment. It is saying yes to life as it is not as you wished it to be. And in that yes, you rise. But rising doesn't feel like glory at first. It feels like emptiness. Like standing in a life stripped of its familiar anchors, stripped of the chaos that once made you feel alive. You look around and everything feels still, too still. The drama is gone. The emotional spikes, the constant back and forth of someone else's validation defining your worth. It's all gone now. And what you're left with is the raw, unnerving quiet of your own presence. At first, you might mistake this quiet for loneliness, but stay with it. Don't run. Don't try to fill the space just because it feels foreign, because what you're feeling isn't loneliness. It's freedom still unfamiliar on your tongue. It's the breath of your own soul echoing in a space that once belonged to someone else. It's the beginning of intimacy with yourself. You see, letting go is not just a psychological act. It is spiritual. It is the threshold between unconscious repetition and conscious becoming. The moment you stop orbiting around someone else's gravity and start creating your own. And that moment is terrifying, because it means responsibility. No more blame, no more hiding behind what they did or didn't do, no more waiting to be rescued. You are the one now, the one who chooses, the one who heals, the one who becomes. This is the true beginning of your individuation, not when you acquire some new philosophy, but when you fully reclaim the energy you've scattered across your past. Every time you obsess over their words, their absence, their choices, you leak life. But when you call that energy back, when you decide that no one is worth abandoning yourself over anymore, you begin the sacred work of remembering who you are. And who you are is not a role, not an identity fixed by trauma, or lineage, or desire. Who you are is a living process, a dance between the ego and the self, a becoming. And letting go is how you clear the floor for that dance to begin, Jung said. In each of us, there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams, and in dreams you may still see them. You may still feel the longing. But even those dreams begin to change, because when you let go consciously, the unconscious responds. It stops replaying the old pattern. It begins to offer new images, new paths, new symbols of transformation. You begin to dream not of returning to what was, but of becoming what you've never allowed yourself to be. Not someone who is needed, not someone who is chaste, but someone who is whole, someone who radiates truth so deeply that even silence feels like connection. Someone who can walk away, not because they don't feel, but because they feel fully. And choose not to suffer for what no longer serves their evolution. You begin to understand that love is not bondage. Love is not grasping. Love is not the need to be needed. Real love begins only after letting go, because only then can you truly see without distortion who the other person is and who you are. Only then can you meet without projection, without unconscious longing, playing dress-up as devotion. Letting go is not a rejection, it is clarity. And clarity is the foundation of all true power. Power, not over others, but over the only realm you were ever meant to rule, your inner world. You stop trying to change what you can't control. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to feel whole. You stop shrinking yourself just to keep peace with someone else's chaos. And when you stop, something ancient awakens in you. The part that remembers. The part that knows this isn't your first loss, your first death, your first rebirth. You've let go before. You've died before. You've risen before. And you will again. Because you are not fragile. You are not defined by how others failed to see you. You are the force that remains after everything unnecessary has been stripped away. You are the clear, quiet flame in the darkness. And now that you've let go, you can finally burn clean. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer need to explain why you had to walk away, why you had to stop trying, why you had to let it all fall. You know. And that knowing is enough. Letting go doesn't erase the past. It frees you from being enslaved by it. It gives you back the present. It gives you back yourself. And with each passing day, you'll feel the weight lift. Not all at once, but piece by piece. You'll notice you don't check your phone for them anymore. You don't replay the conversation. You don't dream of revenge or reunion. You just live. And that living, that breath, that step that morning where your first thought isn't of them, that is your rebirth. There's a sacred moment in healing where you realize you're no longer surviving. You're simply being. You wake up and feel the air without needing it to fill a void. You move through your day not because you're escaping something, but because you're genuinely here, present, breathing, whole. And in that quiet emergence, you start to notice beauty again. Not the grand kind, not the kind that screams. The subtle kind, the way the sun cuts through your window, the way a stranger smiles without asking anything in return, the way your chest no longer tightens at the thought of them. That's the miracle. That's what letting go makes possible. Not forgetting, but forgiving reality for not matching your dream. And choosing to live anyway. This is the moment the self begins to lead. The part of you that isn't tethered to memory or fantasy. The part that trusts not because it's naive, but because it's integrated. You've met your shadow. You've made peace with the pain. You no longer split your soul in half to survive. Now you live as one. Jung said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration. And letting go was the door to that integration, the place where your grief and your grace now meet. The place where the one who suffered and the one who watches suffering are no longer at war. They walk together, and from that union strength is born. Not the strength of resistance, but the strength of surrender. The kind of strength that bows before what it cannot change and loves itself through the letting. The kind that no longer seeks to win, but to understand. The kind that knows love doesn't always mean staying, and peace doesn't always come wrapped in closure. You no longer need to narrate your pain to feel seen. You no longer need an audience to validate your healing. You have yourself. And that self is enough. More than enough. It's the ground you now stand on, not as a reaction, but as a revelation. Because what letting go ultimately gives you is the revelation that you are not what was taken. You are not what was left. You are not what didn't last. You are what remains. You are the stillness after the storm. You are the clarity that rises from the ashes of illusion. And now, you no longer fear endings. You honor them. Because you've lived through one and discovered that it wasn't death, it was birth. Birth into a new relationship with reality. With self. With the divine intelligence of your own psyche. You begin to trust life again. Not blindly, not foolishly, but from a deep well of understanding. You know now that everything returns to the self. Every heartbreak, every confusion, every longing. It all circles back to the place you once abandoned, but have now reclaimed your own center. And in that center, you begin to attract differently. You're no longer drawn to chaos that mimics childhood wounds. You're no longer seduced by those who trigger your trauma and call it passion. You are not seeking validation from people who cannot see you. You are seeing yourself. And because you see yourself, you begin to see others clearly too. Not as saviors, not as solutions, not as mirrors for your emptiness, but as fellow souls navigating their own becoming. You love more freely now, not because you need them to stay, but because you're okay if they go. This is what liberation tastes like, unburdened love. Boundless compassion, honest boundaries, the freedom to feel everything without being defined by anything. Letting go didn't make you cold. It made you clear. It didn't harden you. It refined you. You still feel, you still dream, but now you do so from a rooted place, not a desperate one. Now you don't chase. You allow. You don't beg. You bless. You don't lose yourself in love. You meet yourself deeper through it. And the deeper you go, the more you realize this journey was never about them. Not really. They were the catalyst, the reflection, the crucible. But the real work, the real fire, was always within. They were just the match. You were the forest waiting to burn so you could regrow stronger. And now you rise from that ash not as someone new but as someone true. The one you were always becoming beneath the fear, beneath the mask, beneath the longing. You no longer confuse love with possession. You no longer confuse attachment with connection. You no longer confuse pain with purpose. You know now that your purpose is not to endure, but to expand, to become, to live fully without apology, even if it means letting go of everything that once made you feel safe. Because now you understand that safety is not the absence of loss. It is the presence of self, and you are here, alive, awake, at peace. And now that you're here, something ancient begins to stir, not a memory, but a knowing. A cellular remembrance that you were never meant to live half alive. That love was never supposed to cost your truth. That healing was never meant to be passive. It was meant to be a revolt, a quiet revolution in the heart, a reclamation of everything you once gave away. You feel it now in your bones. That this is not the end of your story. This is the moment you begin writing it yourself. No longer dictated by fear, by projections, by the ghost of who you thought you had to be. You're no longer trying to be understood by those who only saw fragments. You're no longer adjusting your light to fit inside someone else's shadow. You're done shrinking. You've tasted what it means to be whole. And wholeness, unlike perfection, makes room for everything, the joy and the grief, the love and the letting go. It doesn't ask you to erase the past. It asks you to carry it differently. Not as a wound, but as wisdom. That's what happens when you let go. Not just of them, but of the need to be rescued, the need to be proven right, the need to rewrite the ending. You begin to accept that the ending was perfect because it brought you back to yourself. And the self you've become doesn't seek revenge, doesn't live in resentment, doesn't rehearse the pain. The self you've become walks forward with quiet power, with open eyes, with a heart no longer afraid to break because it knows how to rebuild. Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And now you choose to become someone free, someone honest, someone whose life is no longer a reaction but a creation. You will still miss them sometimes. That's okay. Missing is not a mistake. It's a sign that you were present, that you loved, that you risked your heart. But missing is no longer a weight. It's a wave. And you've learned how to let the waves move through you without drowning in them. You've learned how to stand. Because this isn't about never falling. This is about rising differently every time you do. And now, you rise with boundaries, with clarity, with the unshakable knowing that you are allowed to leave anything that asks you to abandon yourself in order to stay. You rise with gentleness. Not just for others, but for you, for the parts of you that held on too long, that didn't know better, that just wanted to be loved. You no longer shame those parts. You hold them. You thank them. You release them. You rise with reverence for your path, for your wounds, for the strange and sacred way that life breaks you only to rebuild you deeper. You look back not with bitterness, but with blessing. Because every loss was a mirror. Every disappointment a teacher, every heartbreak a threshold. And now, you've crossed that threshold. You're on the other side. You're no longer waiting for permission to feel free. You are freedom embodied. You're no longer a prisoner of what-ifs. You are the living answer to your own soul's calling. You are not done growing. You are not done loving. But you are done bleeding for what was never meant to stay. You are done shrinking for what refuses to rise. You are done proving your worth to those who only knew how to measure absence. You are here now in the light, in the quiet, in the vast and holy ground of your own becoming. This is the gift of letting go, not escape, not forgetting, but transformation. You will lose people on this path. You will lose identities, roles, stories, fantasies, but you will gain something far greater. You will gain yourself, and in gaining yourself, you become the love you were always seeking. Not the fleeting kind, not the conditional kind. The kind that remains no matter who stays, no matter who leaves. The kind that doesn't beg to be chosen because it has already chosen itself. This is the work. This is the path. This is the healing that time alone cannot offer. Because time does not free you, only truth does. And the truth is this: you were always enough. You were always whole. You were always free. You just forgot. And now you remember.
Jung once said that the greatest danger to the human soul is not hatred, but envy. And here lies the paradox. Why do empaths, those who give, who soothe, who pour light into others, so often awaken the most venomous envy in the very people who claim to love them? Jung discovered that envy is not born in the absence of love, but often in its disguise. And it is empaths, with their unusual depth of sensitivity, who become the mirror that reveals hidden inadequacies in those around them. Today, I'll take you inside this unsettling truth. We'll walk through Jung's insights, clinical encounters, and the shadows they revealed. You'll see how the empath's very presence, their aura of receptivity, can stir unconscious storms in others. Storms cloaked as affection but driven by envy. And you'll feel, perhaps in your own life, how this silent undercurrent has shaped relationships you thought were safe. Imagine this: a patient once told Jung she felt suffocated by her husband's love. Every gift he gave, every compliment, every gesture seemed laced with an invisible toxin. She could not name it, but she felt it eroding her sense of self. Jung listened and slowly guided her to see what was hidden. Her husband's love was not love at all, but envy disguised as devotion. He admired her vitality, her intuition, her warmth, qualities he felt absent in himself. But instead of nurturing them within, he sought to absorb and diminish them in her. She felt adored, yet diminished, elevated, yet erased. This is the paradox of the empath's life: to be needed deeply, and yet resented for the very qualities that make them so vital. For Jung, envy was the shadow emotion so often denied, so rarely admitted. It slithered in through projection, making the envied one feel guilty for their own light. If you are an empath, you may know this feeling. You shine naturally, not because you seek the spotlight, but because your soul vibrates with perception. And yet those who stand beside you sometimes darken, shrinking against the brightness they once praised. You feel their subtle withdrawal, their sharp remarks cloaked in jest, their sudden silences. You wonder, what did I do wrong? Here is Jung's haunting revelation: you did nothing wrong. Your very being is enough to summon the shadow in others. Your existence is a mirror they cannot bear. In you, they see what they could be, but are not. What they once suppressed: creativity, intuition, emotional freedom stands before them, alive in your presence. And envy, like a silent poison, corrodes what they call love. But envy is not only their burden. For the empath, it becomes a crucible. You feel the subtle theft, your energy drained, your joy weighed down, your intuition second-guessed. Slowly, you may shrink yourself to ease their discomfort, dimming your own flame so they may not choke on its brilliance. Jung warned against this sacrifice. To mutilate your own light to soothe another's shadow is to betray the self, the deepest center of your being. Yet he also saw the path forward. The empath's task is not to retreat from love, nor to harden against connection, but to see through the mask, to recognize envy for what it is, even when clothed in tenderness, to understand that love without respect is possession, and possession without growth is parasitism. Jung taught that when you name the shadow, you weaken its hold. And so too, when you, as the empath, dare to see envy beneath the mask of affection, you reclaim your sovereignty. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine this: you are standing in front of a mirror. Behind you, someone smiles, telling you how much they admire you. But when you look closely, their reflection shows not admiration, but hunger. They want to consume the very qualities they praise. This is the reality Jung described. The question is, will you allow them to drink your light, or will you protect the sacred fire that is yours alone? We begin here. in the paradox of being loved yet envied, cherished yet diminished. But this is only the threshold. Jung showed that in every descent into shadow lies the seed of transformation. The journey of the empath is not merely to endure the envy of others, but to confront it, to learn from it, and ultimately to rise sovereign from its grip. The descent always begins subtly. Jung noted that the empath rarely recognizes envy immediately. It arrives in whispers, not shouts. At first, the envious one cloaks their hunger in affection. They call you radiant, talented, special. You feel cherished, seen. Yet beneath their words is a tension you cannot name, a tightening in your chest, an instinct that something is off. Jung believed this moment is critical. The psyche senses what the conscious mind denies. Your unconscious whispers, beware. But the empath's nature is to trust, to soothe, to give. And so you dismiss the warning. You tell yourself you're imagining things. This is how the trap forms. Consider one of Jung's patients, a young woman who had grown up praised for her sensitivity. She could feel others' moods before they spoke, anticipate their needs before they asked. Her fiancé adored her, showering her with compliments about her intuition. Yet slowly, his admiration turned sharp. "You're too sensitive," he would say, mocking what he once praised. "You think too much. You make things up." The very qualities that drew him to her now became his weapons. Jung revealed to her that this was not a change of heart, but the unveiling of envy. He envied her ability to read others something he lacked, something he felt exposed by. This is how envy operates. It begins by praising what it intends to destroy. It admires in order to disarm, and then it resents. The empath, unsuspecting, often turns the blade inward, wondering, "Am I too much? Should I tone down? Should I hide what comes naturally to me?" And thus the empath begins to shrink, not because of guilt, but because of the invisible weight of someone else's shadow. Jung described envy as a thief of life energy. Unlike anger, which explodes and burns out, envy seeps. It steals in silence, draining both giver and receiver. For the one who envies, it corrodes from within, turning admiration into bitterness, turning closeness into suffocation. For the empath, it is like a slow poison in the bloodstream. You wake one morning and realize you no longer laugh as freely. You second-guess your insights. You feel inexplicably tired in their presence. But Jung warned the empath must not confuse this poison for love. He once wrote that love ceases to be love when it seeks to possess. True love nourishes, it does not consume. Envy, disguised as affection, becomes a form of possession. The envious one does not want to walk beside you. They want to hold you down, to ensure you do not rise higher than their wounded pride will allow. You, the empath, may recognize this now. Think of someone who claimed to love you but left you feeling smaller, not larger. Someone whose words of praise left a sting, as though you owed them your joy. This is the experience Jung mapped so carefully. He saw that the empath becomes a mirror too clear for others to tolerate. You awaken in them the gap between who they are and who they could be. Instead of transforming that pain, they project it onto you. They call you too much, too sensitive, too different. Their envy becomes your supposed flaw. Yet here lies the turning point. Jung believed that awareness itself begins the process of individuation, the return to your wholeness. To see envy for what it is, without guilt, is to reclaim power. You are not responsible for the shadow another refuses to face. You cannot drink their poison to spare them. Your task is to see it, name it, and refuse to let it define you. And yet, Jung did not stop at analysis. He saw that envy, for the empath, could become a teacher. It teaches discernment. Not every smile is safe. Not every I love you is love. It teaches sovereignty. You cannot dim yourself without losing your soul. It teaches strength that those who envy you confirm the very power they resent. In the crucible of envy, the empath begins to awaken. Picture this moment as Jung might describe it. You stand in a dimly lit corridor, shadows pressing on all sides. Behind you, whispers accuse too much, too strange, too sensitive. But ahead, a faint light flickers. It is yourself, your undiminished essence calling you forward. The envy you have endured has carved an opening, painful but real. The question is whether you will walk through it or remain in the corridor of shadows that are not your own. For Jung, individuation always required this choice to separate what is yours from what is projected onto you. For the empath, that means recognizing when love is possession, when admiration is envy, when closeness is corrosion. It means daring to step into the light without apology. But there is a cost, and Jung never ignored it. To name envy is to risk losing the relationship that depends on its disguise. The envious one will resist. They may rage, withdraw, or turn others against you. They will say you are selfish, cold, ungrateful. And here, again, is the empath's crucifixion. Do you betray yourself? Or do you risk being betrayed by them? Jung taught that the soul demands loyalty to itself above all. To betray yourself is to live unlived, to walk half asleep. To risk their betrayal is to walk awake. And so the empath's journey deepens. What began as confusion, the ache of being loved and envied, becomes a crucible for awakening. You begin to see clearly. You begin to stand firmly. And in that clarity, the shadow trembles. Jung often described envy as a silent thief of intimacy. What begins as closeness, as warmth, as the illusion of devotion, slowly transforms into something suffocating. The empath feels it not first in the mind, but in the body, a tightening in the chest, a heaviness in the stomach, a subtle dissonance between words and energy. You hear, "I love you," but your nervous system whispers, "I am being drained." This is because envy, in Jung's understanding, is parasitic, unlike admiration, which uplifts both giver and receiver. Envy takes. It cannot celebrate without comparison. It cannot love without possession. And so, when someone pretends to love an empath, what they often seek is not union but extraction, the slow siphoning of light, until the empath no longer glows brighter than their shadow can tolerate. Jung observed this dynamic vividly in his casework. One man, charismatic and outwardly affectionate toward his wife, would speak endlessly of her beauty and grace. Yet when she pursued her own art, her own joy, he became withdrawn and cold. He belittled her subtly, questioned her choices, shamed her for neglecting him. His love was contingent, fragile, always threatened by her autonomy. Jung saw the truth. He did not love her vitality. He envied it. And to maintain the illusion of love, he sought to extinguish the very flame he claimed to admire. For the empath, this dynamic is uniquely dangerous. Your gift is your openness, your instinct to merge with others. You feel their wounds as your own. And so when envy enters disguised as love, you unconsciously take responsibility for it. You try to heal it by dimming yourself, by shrinking, by apologizing for the very qualities that make you alive. But Jung warned that this is soul suicide. To diminish the self for another's comfort is to mutilate the psyche, to deny the path of individuation. This is the empath's crucible. You face a paradox: to remain fully yourself risks rejection, but to compromise risks annihilation of your essence. Jung believed that true individuation requires precisely this confrontation: to choose yourself, even if others resent it, to refuse to carry the envy that belongs to another soul. Marmo. And yet here is where transformation begins. Jung insisted that the shadow, once seen, is no longer ruler. The moment you name envy, its spell breaks. It no longer hides beneath words of devotion or gestures of care. You see it clearly for what it is: a projection, a wound in the other, not a flaw in you. That clarity is liberation. It allows the empath to step out of the snare of guilt, to stop questioning, "What is wrong with me?" and begin affirming, "This is what is right with me." Close your eyes and imagine this moment. You are standing across from someone who claims to love you. Their smile is warm, their words affectionate. Yet behind their eyes, you see the flicker of resentment, the tightening of envy. In that instant, you do not collapse. You do not dim. Instead, you stand taller. You breathe deeply. You whisper inwardly, "Their shadow is not my burden." And in that act, you step into sovereignty. Jung believed that envy is not only a test but also a teacher. For the empath, it teaches discernment. Not all love is safe. Not all affection is pure. You learn to read beneath words, to trust the signals of your body, to listen to the unconscious as it warns you. And more than that, envy teaches you the necessity of boundaries. Jung emphasized that individuation is impossible without separation, without the courage to define where you end and another begins. The empath, by nature, struggles with this. Your instinct is to dissolve into others, to merge. But envy forces the boundary. It demands that you say, "This is mine, not yours. My light is not for your consumption. My joy is not your property." In drawing that line, you awaken to your true self. But Jung also warned of the cost. When you refuse to be diminished, those who envy you may turn hostile. They may accuse, withdraw, or punish. This is the part the empath fears most: abandonment, rejection, exile. And yet Jung was clear: the cost of loyalty to yourself is always less than the cost of betrayal of your soul. To live small for the comfort of others is a prison. To walk alone in your light is freedom. And so the empath's journey becomes alchemical. The lead of envy, once endured, becomes the gold of selfhood. What once drained you now strengthens you. Each encounter with envy sharpens your vision, deepens your discernment, strengthens your sovereignty. You no longer mistake possession for love. You no longer confuse flattery with respect. You begin to see clearly, to love clearly, to live clearly. The paradox is this: the very envy that once threatened to destroy you becomes the crucible that transforms you. Without it, you may never have learned to stand in your full self. Without it, you may never have discovered the necessity of boundaries. Without it, you may never have awakened to the truth of your own light. And this is what Jung revealed. The shadow does not merely destroy, it initiates. It calls you into deeper consciousness, into fuller being. The empath who survives envy does not merely endure, they evolve. They become sovereign, radiant, untouchable by the projections of others. They become what Jung called the self-whole, undiminished, beyond the reach of envy's claws. The question remains, will you accept the invitation? Will you allow envy to shrink you? Or will you allow it to forge you? Jung often reminded his students that the unconscious speaks in images. And when it comes to envy, The images are unmistakable. In dream after dream, his patients would describe scenes of theft, jewels stolen, food consumed, houses invaded. These were not random symbols. They were the psyche's way of showing how envy operates through subtle consumption, through the taking of what is precious without ever asking permission. For the empath, these dreams often reveal an inner truth that while others may pretend to love you, what they seek is not union but possession. Jung called this the vampiric shadow, the archetype of the one who feeds on life force without giving in return. You may have felt this in waking life, a relationship where you leave every encounter more exhausted than before, where affection feels like a hook rather than a balm. That is not love. That is hunger disguised. Jung saw this most vividly in what he called the anima/animus complex. In his patients, envy often erupted when the partner carried qualities the other had repressed. A man, detached from his own feeling life, would envy the sensitivity of his wife. A woman, cut off from her assertive animus, would envy the strength of her husband. And rather than integrating these qualities within, they sought to own them through the other. The empath, then, becomes both gift and target, embodying the unlived qualities of those around them, and paying the price for it. But Jung insisted projection is not destiny. The task of the conscious individual is to withdraw what has been projected and claim it inwardly. Yet here lies the tragedy. Many do not. They cling to the projection, feeding on the empath rather than awakening themselves. And so the empath becomes crucified for embodying what the other refuses to live. You may know this experience intimately. Someone tells you, "I love your compassion, your creativity, your lightness." But soon, that love curdles. They resent the very qualities they once praised. Why? Because each time you express them, they are reminded of what they lack. Jung wrote, "The envy of others burns against those who live what the envious one cannot." For the empath, this burning is constant, quiet, corrosive. And yet, within this suffering lies an initiation. Jung described individuation as the journey through fire, the confrontation with shadow that forges the true self. For the empath, envy becomes that fire. It forces you to decide, will you abandon your gifts to appease those who resent them, or will you stand, even if it means standing alone? This is not an easy choice. The empath's deepest fear is abandonment. Your heart longs for union, for harmony. To risk rejection feels like death. But Jung saw that the real death is different. It is the death of the self when you betray your own nature. The abandonment you fear from others pales compared to the abandonment of your own soul. So imagine this as Jung might frame it. You are in an ancient alchemical chamber. Before you, a cauldron boils with black liquid, the envy of others. You are tempted to pour your own essence into it, to dilute yourself so they will not rage against you. But the true alchemy demands the opposite. You do not pour yourself out. You allow the fire beneath the cauldron to refine you. Slowly, painfully, the black liquid turns to gold. What once poisoned you becomes the very force that strengthens you. This is the empath's initiation. In modern life, this initiation appears everywhere. In friendships that collapse when you succeed. In families where one sibling resents the other's sensitivity. In workplaces where your intuition is both prized and mocked. Jung's insights remain timeless because the archetype of envy is timeless. And so too is the transformation it demands. The empath who awakens through envy learns something vital. Boundaries are not walls against love. They are gates of discernment. Jung taught that individuation requires separation before union. You must first know who you are before you can unite with another. Envy forces this knowing. It makes you draw the line. This is my energy. This is my gift. This is not for your consumption. And once you claim this boundary, something extraordinary happens. Envy loses its power. For the envious one, their projections no longer stick. They are returned to sender. For you, the empath, the guilt evaporates. You see clearly their envy was never about you. It was about the unlived life within them. You are not thief nor villain. You are mirror. But clarity is not without cost. As Jung warned, some relationships cannot survive the exposure of envy. When you stop feeding the projection, the envious one may rage, withdraw, or vanish. This is painful, but it is also necessary. For in losing what was never true love, you gain what cannot be taken yourself. And here lies the gift. Envy, the very force that once threatened to destroy you, becomes the midwife of your individuation. It forces you to grow teeth where once you only had tenderness. It forces you to claim your essence where once you gave it away freely. It forces you to walk as sovereign, no longer hostage to the shadows of others. This, Jung would say, is the paradox of the empath's path. Your greatest suffering, being envied by those who pretend to love you, becomes your greatest transformation. For in surviving envy, you discover that your light was never fragile. It was always fire. Jung often warned that the most dangerous shadows are not those we recognize, but those masquerading as virtues. And in no place is this more treacherous than in the realm of false love poisoned by envy. The empath, craving connection, is most vulnerable here, because what is offered appears to be love, feels like devotion, but is secretly driven by hunger and comparison. Think of it as standing in a grand hall of mirrors. One mirror reflects admiration, another reflects devotion, another reflects desire. But behind them, if you look closely, lurks a different image, a shadowed figure who does not want to see you thrive, but to capture and contain your light. Jung understood this duplicity intimately. He taught that envy wears the mask of love, because love is the one disguise that lowers our defenses. The empath learns this lesson in the hardest way through lived betrayal. A friend who once celebrated your successes begins to vanish when you share them. A partner who cherished your compassion begins to accuse you of weakness. A family member who admired your independence turns cold the moment you stand apart from them. Each time, you are left bewildered, wondering, how did love turn against me? Jung's answer was blunt. It did not turn, it revealed itself. Love without respect, without equality, without mutual growth, is not love at all. It is envy in costume. The empath's work is to pierce the costume, to name what is hidden, and to act accordingly. But here is where the story deepens. Jung saw that what we experience outwardly is also a reflection inwardly. If you, as an empath, continually attract envy disguised as love, the psyche is signaling something that you must confront your own shadow as well. It is not that you are envious, rather, it is that you are blind to your own power. You unconsciously deny your brilliance, your vitality, your ability to stand sovereign. And so, the unconscious brings you relationships that force you to see it through the mirror of envy. This is the psychological crucible the empath suffers, not merely because others envy them, but because they have yet to claim the full weight of their own self. Envy is the universe's brutal reminder. You are brighter than you admit. Own it, or you will suffer it. Jung's archetype of individuation comes alive here. To individuate is not only to integrate shadow, but to embody the self without apology. For the empath, this means no longer dimming to soothe others, no longer shrinking to maintain peace. It means standing in the tension of envy without collapsing under it. To be the mirror, but not the scapegoat. And this transformation is never abstract. It is visceral, lived. It looks like saying no when silence would be easier. It looks like walking away from a relationship that thrives on your diminishment. It looks like standing in a room where your very presence triggers others and refusing to shrink. Jung called this the path of the hero, but for the empath, it is the path of the sovereign. Yet every ascent requires a descent. Before the empath can rise, they must confront the grief of realizing how many loves were illusions. Jung knew this grief well in his patients, the shattering realization that affection was envy, that devotion was possession, that intimacy was control. He saw their despair, their collapse, their temptation to numb, but he also saw that this grief was sacred. It was the death of illusion, the precondition for truth. You, too, may feel this. The sting of betrayal, the ache of realizing that someone who claimed to love you secretly resented you. Do not rush past this grief. Jung would say, descend into it, for in the descent, the false dissolves, and in the dissolving, the true self is revealed. Imagine this descent now. You walk into a cavern lit only by the faint glow of embers. Around you lie the broken masks of those who pretended to love you. Each mask whispers the same words, I adored you, but I envied you more. You kneel among them, tears burning, grief heavy. Yet as you sit, the embers grow brighter. They gather around you, forming a fire, and in its flames you see yourself undiminished, unmasked, whole. The fire does not consume you, it crowns you. This is the turning point Jung promised. Envy no longer defines you, it refines you. What once poisoned now awakens. You rise from the cavern not weaker but sovereign. The empath who once absorbed envy now stands immune to it, not because it no longer exists, but because it no longer dictates their worth. And here lies the final paradox: the very people who envied you once sought to make you small. But in surviving them, you become vast. Their shadow was your initiation, their envy, your awakening. Jung would say the self needed them to test you, to burn away your illusions, to call forth your wholeness. So the question, as always, is this: will you see envy as your curse or as your crucible? Will you mourn only what you lost, or will you claim what you have become? For the empath who dares, envy becomes not the end of love, but the beginning of sovereignty. And now, standing at the edge of this journey, you are faced with the same choice Jung's patients faced: to return to the old pattern, or to step forward into the unknown, where envy no longer imprisons you, but awakens you. If you feel this awakening within you, comment, I honor my sovereign light. Your liberation is not just your protection, but a beacon for others who still walk in shadow. Thanks for watching. See you in the next dimension.